Alright, yo, so this video is going to be for those scrappers out there who normally throw computers like this in the shred pile, or the light iron pile, whatever you want to call it. The story behind this computer is in the last video I made where I was getting all the steel roofing material out of the one dumpster in one of the last clips there. After I loaded that up and I took that load to the scrapyard, I had to go to a scrapyard I don't normally go to because it was a Saturday and I was going somewhere to pick up some snowplows. I just really needed to get that load off my truck. So I went to a scrapyard that was on the way, and as I was unloading that load of material, I saw this thing just kind of chilling in the pile. So I decided that, I was going to throw this on my truck. It's not stealing because my truck weighed probably another 20 pounds, 40 pounds more than it would have without this computer. So really I just paid 7 cents a pound in 20-pound increments to get this thing. Somebody unfortunately dropped this thing off in the steel pile for 7 cents a pound. We're going to find out how much money they lost by doing so. In order to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to weigh this thing up as it sits, because this is how I picked it up. It's how the person scrapped it. We're going to weigh how much it weighs and then figure out the math. Our scale does the math for us to see how much money this would sell for as it sits. With that being said, the scrapyard scales go in 20-pound increments, so it could be 20 to 40 pounds, I'm assuming, for this computer. So we're going to figure that out as well. So let's go ahead and weigh this thing. And then after that, we're going to take it apart and we're going to weigh all the components individually. I got to turn my scale on here. That always helps. I'll kind of turn it towards you guys here so you guys can see it a little bit better, hopefully. Might have to zoom you in here. I'll have to zoom you in here. Yeah, so we'll weigh it up. This has a 60-pound load scale, so I'm not afraid to break it. So we're at 24.24 pounds. If you weighed this up on a scrapyard scale by itself, it would register as 20 pounds. Like I said, it may be plus or minus 20 pounds by the time everything is all said and done. Like if the scale was rounding up on you when you pulled in heavy and then rounded down on you when you weighed out, just because this weighed is 20 pounds, you might actually get paid for 40 pounds. So we'll figure that up. So I want to do my math based on this weight here, though. So as it sits at 7 cents a pound, because that's what the yard was paying, we would be able to sell this thing for $1.70 if they had a super accurate scale like I do. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to break this down into its individual components. We're fortunate enough, this one has a clear screen so we can see that it has everything. It is missing something that used to go here. I'm not really sure what. This does look like an older computer, but age doesn't matter when it comes to scrap value. At least not of the motherboard and the other components. The CPUs and some stuff like that, yeah, they have more value for the newer ones that are of a certain type. If you can reuse it I think they flash the CPU or whatever and then sell it used or refurbished or whatever. So like if it's an Intel i7 that was made recently, it's going to have a higher value than an Intel i3 that was made 20, 30 years ago. And even those are going to have a higher value than ones that just get scrapped and recycled. So, with that being said, I don't know what CPU is in this thing yet, but I can see that it has a power supply. It's got some disk drives, a motherboard, some finger cards. There's definitely some RAM and a CPU in there somewhere, and a bunch of wires. There's some shred, obviously, and yeah, it does. What's telling me that this thing is older is this thing right here. That looks really freaking old to me. I'm not a computer guy. I don't really know for sure, but that disk drive looks old. I think this is a floppy disk drive that's jammed way back in there. If it has those two things, I'm assuming it's pretty old. So let's take this thing apart and find out what value it has taking it apart. Alright, so now we got the computer broken down into all its individual components. I got the motherboard back here. You couldn't really see it on camera there, but it's a large socket motherboard, which pays pretty good, I think. I got the hard HDDs with the boards over there, disk drives, power supply, aluminum. There's a copper heatsink, little fan things, CPU, RAM, finger cards. Then I got low-grade wire in a bucket that's sitting at the base of this camera. So I'm going to weigh up the shred and the low-grade wire and see what they pay. And then I'm going to have to go on boardsort.com and find out the price of everything else. So let's figure out the price of the shred here, just to get it out of the way, because it's a lot of junk on the table right now. I'm trying to get rid of all the junk that's in the frame here. I'm trying to figure out a way to get this on here where it's not resting on other things. Alright, there we go. I can't even see it. Hold on. Alright, so it's 10.88 pounds. At 7 cents a pound, that would get us 76 cents. I'm going to write that down before I forget it. Then I'm going to remove this off the scale. I'm going to throw a bucket on here, and I'm going to tear it out, which means I'm going to zero the scale with the bucket on there. So the scale is registering no weight at the moment. I'm going to put on my low-grade wire. We got 0.99 pounds of that at 35 cents a pound. We're looking at 35 cents for the wire. So I'm going to write that down. Alright, now like I said, for all this other junk here, I'm gonna have to go on boardsort.com and get a price for all this stuff real quick. All right, so this is BoardSort's website here. I got pulled up on the iPad. I just wanted to show you guys the various prices for CPUs if they test out okay. This is for Intel i-Series CPUs. You can get anywhere from like scrap value for these ones, which are old and junky. I've had a few of these i3 3 series, which I got paid $1 a piece for. And then, you know, you can go all the way up down here is where they got these newer ones, which some of them go for $80 a piece. So the CPUs can vary, I'm saying vary too much. They can vary in price by a whole lot. You know, you're getting probably about 50 cents for this one, whereas you can get $80 for this one. You know, it just depends on what's in the computer. And then you hit eScrap prices here, and then they have probably the best website I've seen for any eScrap buyer out there. You know, they got all, you know, like different categories of stuff here. Then you can see the actual thing there, and then they got the price for it. I think they have, whether it's, there's a color coding system, prime focus item, potential cleaning. So they color code it. They even say do not send certain things, which I think those are for batteries. Yeah, they don't want you sending any lithium ion batteries. I think that is green there for taped lead acid battery. I'm colorblind though, so you'll have to help me out. So yeah, anyway, you know, like this is just CPUs. They have a whole bunch of different things here. And then, you know, they actually have videos. If you click on that, it loads YouTube videos where they actually talk about all the different scrap. This is an advertisement here. So we'll go back to this, and then I'm going to write down all the prices on my paper and see what all categories of everything that I have. And then we'll come back to this. I forgot to say too, I think if you click on things, if you're not sure what it is, they have pictures. So that's just some random CPU. And then this is the ceramic top AMD, which looks similar to what I have without a ceramic top. So I'm trying to find AMD ceramic, no metal. And that's exactly the CPU that I have. So that CPU that I have is worth $85 a pound. Obviously I don't have a whole pound of it, but that's how much we can get for it if we did have a pound. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead, write all this stuff out, and then yeah, like I said, you know, you can just click on random things to figure out what it is if you're not sure. Alright, so I went and got prices together on my notepad for all the various things I have on the table here. Keep in mind that some of the things may pay better elsewhere, but BoardSort does seem to pay pretty high for the most part. And then for those of you that want to cry about how you need all sorts of fancy tools and things to take computers apart, everything I used is right here. I used a screw gun with a Phillips head bit. It's kind of extended a little bit. Some computers, you do need a Torx bit, but they're really not hard to get either. And you don't need the fancy screw gun thing. You could do it with a drill, or you could just do it by hand. I mean, it'd be a lot slower, but at the same time, oh, hello. All right. So I was interrupted, and I had to do a quick heavy equipment repair. Drill out a bolt that got stuck in a hole. So, yeah. I think I was talking about the tools you need to do this, and it's really not much, you know. So let's go ahead and start weighing everything up here. So we'll turn on our scale again. I'm going to try to bring you guys in here so you can see the numbers on the scale. So that way you know I'm not lying or nothing. So we'll start with the piece that everybody thinks is worth so much money. CPU. It weighs 0.2 pounds and $85 a pound. That would give us $1.70, which is actually how much we paid for this entire computer. So I'll go ahead and write that down. Now I'll get rid of this. I'll throw it over here so that way I don't get it confused. And I got the gold-plated RAM, which also everybody thinks is worth so much money. That goes for $43 a pound. So that would give us $4.30. And now the gold-plated finger cards without the bracket and no heavy heat sinks. Those go for $7.50 a pound, which would give us $3.23. I know a lot of you are going to be like, man, you should cut the fingers off of those. Well, in my experience, it's not worth it. You're actually losing money. Let the hammer mill take care of it. They pay for those gold fingers, so, you know, they can get them sorted out a lot quicker than you can. Now we have a piece of copper here. That pays $3.15 a pound, or 38 cents. I call this number 2 copper because it does have a bunch of crap on it right now. If you clean that up, you could probably go for a number 1 copper. But yeah, right now it's just a number 2. And you can tell it's copper because I ground it down and it's a copper color there. I had a heat sink that confused me because it's copper plated, but it's aluminum. So I had to scratch that with the grinder to find out it was aluminum. So let's weigh up the aluminum heat sinks here. And these pay 35 cents a pound, or 21 cents total. We'll get rid of those. These little fan things, I'm not really sure what they pay. It could be 10 cents a pound. So we'll go with that for now, but I'm not really sure. Then we got our power supply with no wires. That goes for 30 cents or 77 cents altogether. We'll remove this. We'll get our disk drives here. They pay 25 cents a pound to give us 70 cents there. And then we got our hard drives here. In this particular computer, there was 3 hard drives. Kind of weird. I don't know what all is on this computer. These things were made in February of 2004. So, you know, that's 21 years of collecting whatever information this computer collected. I have no clue what that would be. You know, could just be standard work stuff. Could be filled with child porn. Nobody really knows. I'm not going to plug that into my computer. So that pays 70 cents per pound because I still have the boards on here. Some of the computer guys say to take them boards off, but I'm not that good at this stuff, so I'm going to leave them on and get paid for them how they are. So give us $2.74. The hard drives alone are worth more than what we paid for this computer. So I'm going to set them off to the side. And now, this is where the real money's at. This is not a myth. You're going to see it with your own eyes. The motherboard is worth way more money than a scrap CPU. So this is worth $7 a pound. And that one board is worth $10.36. I know a lot of guys who do computer scrap, and they always leave the motherboards in the computer for some reason. I believe that is a big mistake. This is where the most of the money is at. I'll even show you my sheet here so far. If we look over here, this is the total price of everything. So far, that is the only thing that has paid us more than $5. So the motherboard is where the value's at in computers. Unless you have a really good CPU, then really good CPUs are worth a whole lot more than this. But for most of us, we're not going to probably find those. We're just dealing with scrap CPUs. So the motherboard is where the money's at. Alright, so this notebook is kind of a mess. It's not the most organized spreadsheet ever, but I got it broken down here. So, if the scrapyard paid this dude probably $1.40 or $2.80 for this computer, that's how much I had to pay for it as well. If we had a more accurate scale, it would have been $1.70 because they paid shred prices for it. If you were to take the whole computer to board sort instead of dumping it in your shred pile, you would have got paid $10.18 for this computer because they pay significantly higher for computers than your local scrapyards will pay for shred. So, you know, if you don't want to do any work to this, but you can drive it to board sort, you know, that's almost 1,000% increase is taking it to board sort versus dumping it in your shred pile. So when we broke it down, you know, obviously we still had shred. It needs to go to the shred pile. So, that would have paid us 76 cents, which is 50% of what we got here. Then, when we add up everything, at the end of the day, when everything gets turned in, if prices don't change, we're going to get $25.54 for everything that we did once it's all turned in. So that's about a $24 increase versus what we got just dumping this in the shred pile. Alright, yeah, so I got interrupted again. Some dude came and picked up the part that I fixed for him. But yeah, so pretty much essentially you can make, on this computer anyway, we made $24 more than what the scrapyard paid for it in the shred pile. If I wasn't filming this, it probably would have taken about 5 minutes to take that computer apart and put it in the bins that it needed to go into. I'm always very curious about computers, so I do the price breakdowns of them, a lot of them, because for so long, I was that guy that threw all these things in the shred pile. Now I've started to open up my eyes, and I found buyers for this stuff. So now I start taking them apart, and I'm very curious as to how much more money they're worth taken apart versus throwing them in the shred bin or the shred pile. So yeah, that's kind of why I do these videos. It helps me out, and it helps somebody out there. It helps them out as well. It might be you that this video is helping. It might not be. You might know more about computer scrap than I do. But, if you're one of those guys that just likes to throw computers in the shred pile, you might want to rethink your strategy on this. Like I said, it wasn't that hard to break this computer down. And you can see the math right here. That's an additional $24 in our pocket with basically no expenses besides, the small amount of electricity it took to run the screw gun and keep the lights on in here. Even if we didn't feel like doing that though, if we had enough of these to drive it to a e-scrap place, they pay a lot, significantly higher for the computer tower as a whole than the scrapyard does. That's what this number is right here. So you can get about an additional $9 or something like that for the computer we had today, taking it in as a complete unit to an e-scrap place versus your local shred pile. I'm sorry if the numbers bore you, but they help you out. Figure out your numbers, because believe it or not, collecting scrap metal is a business activity, and the language of business is numbers. That's why I make so many spreadsheets, especially for these computers, and wire and stuff like that. It really helps to know the numbers, and for so long, like I said, I didn't think it was worth it to break computers down. I've probably scrapped, I don't know, a couple dozen of them. Just went in the shred pile. If I would have broken them all down, I'd have almost an additional $2,000 probably. Which is insane when you think about it. So, yeah. I'm going to break them down now. Is it worth it to you? Only you can decide that. Not everybody's in the same circumstances. For me, it's definitely worth it. I can legitimately say that. With some of the wire that I do, like I said, I can't say, I don't want to sway your opinion, but for these I will, because that's a significant amount of money there. So hopefully this helps you. If you like this kind of stuff, I have plenty more on my channel. And there will be plenty more to come. So I'll see you later.